message. Hey guys, welcome back to Thoughtful Thursday. I'm Amy.
And I'm Pastor Jason.
We are going through Lent right now. And so we've been kind of going through a few verses on what Jesus said from the cross. So this week we are in John, chapter 19, verses 25 and 27 through 27. So the idea here is kind of thinking of those big questions of why he's saying these specific things on the cross. And we'll kind of get back into that a little bit more in just a moment. So let's get thoughtful. We're back, getting thoughtful, and so we're leading up to these verses, getting into Jesus is on the cross right now. He has been there for hours, and so this whole trek of getting to that point, and he said a couple things before this. We went through, forgive them for what they have done, for they know not what they have done. You'll have to look it up. I don't remember exact words. But beyond that, and then he also talked to the criminal that was hanging beside him on the cross, on his own cross. And so now we're leading up to where he can see Mary, his mother, Mary, his aunt, and Mary Magdalene standing very, very close to him, as close as they could with the guards that were guarding him. They were almost within reaching distance. And they're standing there with John. And so John chapter 19, verse 25 through 27.
Yeah. Amy, I can't wait to hear what you say about this, because this is really one of those verses that catches you and just makes you wonder what's really going on there, right? So near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman, here is your son." And to the disciple he said, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her into his home.
Wow. So there it is, Jesus on the cross speaking, which in itself is a hard thing to do. The way the cross works, if you want to look it up, go look it up. The dynamics of having to speak, you have to stand up, and so you're putting more pressure on your feet, and that hurts because there's a nail through your feet. But to actually relieve and breathe out is a chore. And so he's telling his mother that this is your son now, and John that this is your mother, trying to relay to them, saying, hey, you guys need to take care of each other, is what I'm getting from it. Is like, how this is now your mother. Take care of her, embrace her as your mother, make sure that she has the things she needs. It doesn't say anything about Joseph in these, and I haven't looked into the full history, but maybe he's no longer in the picture. Maybe he's passed away. I don't know for sure, but that moment is not there. It's not spoken. And so that's one of those where it's like, okay, John, you have to take care of her. She is my mother. She is now yours. Yeah. And so that's where walking into that is like, family, not even necessarily by blood. You have to take care of each other.
Yeah, if the crucifixion is like crucial to the good news, is like one of the linchpins, like this moment, along with the other verses that you picked out, like where Jesus is speaking these final words, he is another one of those like linchpins to the good news, because essentially it's saying like in death and resurrection, in love and good news, you belong to each other. And so there's this, in Jesus' death, there's this binding of hearts and souls. And interestingly enough, from a scholarly perspective, we believe that Joseph was much older than Mary, and that he has, in fact, passed away, that he's deceased. And I would love to, you know, like, where's the gospel that tells us, you know, that side? Because there's good stuff in there.
Yeah, that would. It's one of those that it wasn't meant to be as part of the big Bible, but those scholarly things that you can look up and you can read and you can get that history that's there, that you can. That's where you've kind of figured out where things are, and that's kind of neat. It would be neat to know even more, but it's glad that we have what we do have. And so that's kind of where we're talking about John and Mary, and so Mary mother. And then you have Mary Aunt and Mary Magdalene, and they're all there. And that to me speaks about a lot of where Jesus is bringing women into his ministry. And so it's Women's Month. Last month was Black History Month. This week's Women's History Month, Women's Month, something to that effect. So it's interesting how all these different pieces can tie in together on how Jesus is inclusive of every. He loves the lame, the poor. He's loving on all these people, trying to show that to all of us on how to see them for who they are and who they can be. That's kind of what we talked about last week, is how to be mindful and approachable. And we've kind of been going with your sermons in that sense. But this week, it's just very neat on how Mary, the mother, is there, and she's been there. Like it talks about her being there. She was there for 6 hours. How she was heading out. She was going to go stand there with her son and be there with him, and her sister came along with. Sister by marriage is whole thing goes. There's a lot of things that go into that, but that whole piece of bringing everybody in, not just the women themselves, because they were essential. Mary Magdalene being part of like the first big miracle that he did, one of them in the first lineup anyways. And so it's very cool to see all those pieces line up. Even towards those final moments. And so he's teaching about that and caring for others, and how that is working even when he's on a cross. So what are your thoughts on how his teachings there apply to caring for others in our lives?
Well, I think really in celebration of women and this month being attributed to that, so, you know, like, the writers of the Gospels are still writing from a context that's very, you know, patriarchal, or, you know, and so sometimes I think like the full appreciation of women in Jesus' ministry still doesn't quite come through because they're writing from that context. And but ultimately, what Jesus did that no other religion and no other time in history, what Jesus did and his good news did was like took women and elevated their role and brought equality, like by Jesus' statement. And then the church that eventually was birthed out of that became open and gave women that equality, of that name, that purpose, that right in their own name and their own self, which was so important back then. You know, to be themselves. And so so in addition to really like caring for each other, and I think like reaching out and seeing that value, like it's just this whole new wave. And so which is why I'm a guest on your show, you know what I mean? Like it's so clear, and to finally be able to like let that be true and to celebrate that. Absolutely.
It's fun to grow in our ministries in our own right, because I've been doing ministry for years. This is just part of who I am. But to have an actual digital engagement ministry that is focused on this kind of thing is something like it's started then, where Jesus was like, you guys, come on, you guys, you're part of this. And so being able to be part of it even now, and the different ways others can be part of it too, is definitely super cool.
Yep, it's very good.
I have to do a shout out because my mom's actually watching right now. So hi, Mom. And she likes it when Mary, the mother of Jesus, is always like her story behind everything. And so it's definitely fun to see those moments of where there's, I like connection. Connection is fun. That's
and to relate.
Yes.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but to
No.
relate to those mothers, and and I mean that's a huge experience, and there's a lot of spirit in that relation, that connection, and a lot of pain. I mean, when you
Yeah.
said a mother watching her son for 6 hours or however, like I can't imagine that. I think of my own children and watching them grow up, and then seeing them in that final state, it'd be devastating.
Yeah, utterly devastating. That's one of those where it's like, I don't want to go to that, but you can see where lamenting in that is something where you can see how Jesus being on that cross and how he loved us, because he was on the cross because of our sins. That was the burden that he was carrying, but he stayed there because he loves us.
Yeah.
And I love that story of going into that the love is what kept him there, because he's God. He can go, hey, get me down.
Right.
But he was there because he loves us, and he wanted to take on that burden to free us of our sins.
I can imagine that was for Mary kind of the same thing. Like the love that Jesus had for people is probably a lot of what enabled her to bear staying there and witnessing to it. And I can just imagine her saying, like, I don't get this. I don't understand why this is happening and why you're here and why you actually seem to be somewhat okay with it, or like at least allowing it. But I'm trusting this is what needed to happen. That's the only thing. And just knowing and trusting and hoping that this is for really big things. And I think deep down, in the midst of all the agony, I think they saw that, especially as he's like I love you and you will be taken care of.
Yeah. Absolutely. Definitely that love, that connection, that showing that even in those last moments where it's like, I love you, and then you love each other and take care of each other. That's definitely a great way to wrap it up and say, hey, this is where we're at today. And so I want you guys to remember to be thoughtful and share it. Share your comments. Share what you're thinking about on these. If you got something completely different out of it, because that happens. And so I love the connection. And so thank you, Jason, for hopping in today. It was kind of one of those, hey, I need a person. And so thank you for that. And I hope to see all of you again next week. And we've got a new guest next week that hopefully she'll have some great insight for us as well.
Well, thanks for letting me step in. And here's to you for getting thoughtful. And thanks for watching.
Thank you.